Just started the recording, so we should be all right. 4 o'clock in the UK, 11 o'clock in the States on the East Coast. Actually, 1 minute past 4 it is here, according to my laptop. But anybody's guess what the actual time is. It's close enough though. My name's Dennis Barker. You're listening to the Free Association radio show. I'm kind of improvising a little bit again today, but Free Association is improvising and making it up as you go along, so it's an appropriately named show, really. The show the idea originates from a philosophy group that I used to run in Newcastle at the beginning of last year. So we were meeting in a vegan cafe at 6 o'clock on a Saturday evening, and I'm just playing with some words and see if we can come up with stories based around keywords. It's a nice little idea for a group of six or seven people. You can keep it going for an hour and a half, hour 45 minutes, quite easily with that size group. And it was fun. It was fun. While it happened, it lasted about half a year, 6 months or so. It peaked at about 7 people, and then it started to die down a little bit. So people need to be refreshed, I think, in groups. So keeping the format the same didn't work for everybody. But it worked for me, and it worked for about 4 regulars. And it was a nice little group while it worked. So I might do something along those lines on the radio station or on this particular show at some point. If I can find a 2-hour slot that works for me, where I can get 4 or 5 guests, then we can do something similar on the radio and see how that works. I used to do it with Doc Time and Karen when we were doing their shows on Discord and on the New Way. It was run out of a Discord chat room, that one. So that was interesting. The 3 of us, we got a good rapport, so that worked with a bit of audience participation. With exactly that concept. So pick a keyword, talk about what you think the keyword might mean, come up with a version of a definition. Everybody might have a different definition based on their own history and preconceptions and what have you. So that becomes an interesting topic of conversation. Why are the definitions different? What language are you using to describe the word? The language you use to describe the word produces another conversation. So it's easy enough to move along in that chain until you run out of associations. You can come up with stories, movies, events from history, events from the Bible, whatever it might be. Events from Hindu mythology, Greek mythology, anything at all. There's no limit to what you can do with that type of free association, and it's interesting how people react emotionally to certain words, and it tells me things that I find interesting about people, about why people might react to certain words. But it's a good place to start, but really you need an hour and a half or 2 hours and four guests probably for that particular format. If I can find a way to make it work in an hour, then we could do it with 3 probably for an hour. If it was people I've got good rapport with, then I'm quite happy to do that. And that might make for a format change at some point in the next few months when I find the right people. And if anybody's interested in taking part in something like that, drop me a message on Skype. If you search for Dennis Barker, Open Philosopher, or just Open Philosopher on Skype, you should find me. And just send me a text message on Skype, and I'll add you, and we can have a conversation about it, because it has for this particular radio station, it has to be done via Skype. So that might be a thing that happens in the future. If people are interested, if you want to take part, we'll make it audience participation, but you'll have to arrange it in advance, I think, really. I've got a phone-in number, but I'm not as technical as I could be. So organising phone-ins and that sort of thing is on a laptop while you're talking and doing a live radio show. It's probably not the way that I want to do it. So it would have to be arranged in advance. We'll do a couple of rehearsals with the people. If people want to join in, we'll do a couple of trial runs and see how the rapport works and get people used to it, and then we'll do it as a live radio show. Anyway, just a thought. I'm kicking the idea out to see what happens. If anybody's interested, feel free to get in touch. All right, with that out of the way, it's the 12th of September today. I've had my hair cut. I went to the barber's for the first time in a long time. I cut my own hair in March. So just on the day that I started the radio show was the last time I had a haircut. So it was getting quite long. I was in need of a cut, really. So that's done. So I'm the proud owner of a #1 crop now, which means this will last me till about Christmas or maybe just after Christmas. And then I'll have to do it again. But the barber's was interesting. I had to wear a mask to get my hair cut. The guy who was cutting my hair was wearing a mask. He had a full-on top of the range kind of contoured to his face kind of job, and I was wearing a cloth thing that I just stick on my ears. But it kind of works. I was in there for maybe 10, 15 minutes having a conversation with him, and the barber's thing was interesting because everybody was desperate for a haircut during lockdown. Everybody started to realise how much they rely on hairdressers and barbers. And they didn't quite become the saviours of the world, but there was a mad rush. When things started to loosen up, there was a mad rush to the barbers. He was doing appointment only at that point, just to obviously limit the amount of people. There's only one person in the shop, and there's space for two people to sit and wait. So it's a limited amount of thing that he can do. I'm interested because this guy likes to talk. He knows his stuff. I've had conversations with him about music, and he hits the music points very clearly. So I know he's clear. His head's clear. He knows what he's about. So the conversation today was about how the rules are changing by the week, and he's trying to keep up with what he's allowed to do and what he's not allowed to do. But they decided that he needs to wear a visor or goggles now, he said. It used to be that you had to wear a visor, then it was visor and mask, now it's goggles and mask that he has to wear. So he's got this mask with built-in goggles that he's going to be wearing, which I just found hilarious, really. Anyway, that was my conversation with the barber. What I'm going to do is play a little bit of Ryan Dawson, I think. Let's just have a look at the chat room first, though. I know there's a few people in there. Wally's in there. Popsicle Toes is in there. Navy's in there. Captain Fred's in there. And Boy Solomon's in there. And Dirt Engineer is in there. Comet's in there as well. I think Boy Solomon's listening. So if you can hear what I'm saying, Boy Solomon, just give me an indication that it's coming through loud and clear in the chat room, and then I'll carry on. I'm going to play a little bit of Ryan Dawson from YouTube. This is a piece that he did yesterday, which is 9/11 for adults. and I was listening to it, and it's worth playing. And you know, with Ryan Dawson that he's going to talk about specific things. Listen to quite a lot of his stuff now, and he always hits the same topics. So here we go. 9/11 for adults. Let's see what we can. 9/11 for grown-ups. It is. That's the actual title. That's on Ryan's YouTube channel. I'm trying to find the one he did yesterday. I think there is one that he did yesterday, one day ago. Okay, I'm a few minutes into this. I'm just going to let it play because I know what he's likely to say, even if I don't know exactly what he's going to say. So I'm just going to set it away and let it play for maybe 10 minutes.
He was a lawyer for Mark Rich. He got disbarred. She went to jail for 85 days for the flame affair, too. These are all criminals. Miller is also someone that just blames everything on Iraq. She blamed Oklahoma City on Iraq. She blamed 93 on Iraq. She blamed stubbed her toe. Saddam did it. It was like CNN with Russia. So, reliable. By the way, Leibowitz was Cheney's chief of staff. Um, Pure neocon to the core. And nothing happened to these people. I mean, he got.
All right, I'm not sure whether that video's happening for people listening or not, but it was going to be 9/11 Truth for Grown-Ups on Ryan Dawson's channel. For some reason, my screen share doesn't always work on this laptop, but there's not much I can do about that. It's only feedback that tells me. So we'll do something else. We'll try a different video and see. I'll put the screen share back on, so we should be all right with a different video and see what happens anyway. Right, I've played the Eric Weinstein, Jeffrey Epstein thing before, I think. So let's try something else. I was listening to Art Bell interviewing my Martin last night, but I don't really want to go there. Let's see what else we can do with this. No, I'm wanting to go back to that 9/11 for Truth for Grown-Ups. So let's try it again. There's some good stuff in there. So it's worth putting on again. This is just continuing
I
on.
mean, he got disbarred. That was it. Feith and Wolfowitz and Pearl and Bristol and all that, they all got away with it. He set up a media arm called the Weekly Standard, and a lot of the people that supposedly worked there, they had guys writing there like Gary Schmidt and Fred Barnes and stuff, all Jewish Zionists, all lying. Everything they wrote is now proven wrong. But the money behind it came from Lockheed Martin. You got all the seed money from Lockheed from the MIC, and the co-founders are Robert Kagan and William Crystal, and they're all almost 100% overlap with PNEC. Oh, I think I'm allergic to Judith Miller.
Libby, didn't Trump pardon Libby too recently?
Yeah, well, Bush commuted his sentence, and then, God. Well, there's another one he got too. I don't know. Clinton pardoned Rich. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like, he did it an hour before he left.
Drinking those Ghislaine tears. Yeah, it's a rogues gallery of ghouls, man. Yeah.
America runs
Cheers.
on blackmail.
That's great.
Fantastic.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, we got some Ghislaine tears here in New Hampshire.
I'm having root beer for the first time in like 5 years.
Oh,
I
wow.
don't have it in Japan. And I went to Costco today. I was like, root beer. Boom, A&W.
And you
Found
found the
Dr.
root.
Pepper too, I saw.
Yeah, you can get that in Tokyo, but not down where I live. And there is a vending machine in Nippon-bashi that has it. So
That's
got
serious intel, man. In case we ever get over there. So Ryan, it basically,
It
you know,
is.
so when you're looking big picture at this and you're critically thinking about war policy, who's within the Pentagon, who the players are, what their interests are, it points back to all these neoconservative, really Israel first type people. So when looking at 9/11, um, outside of the stuff you mentioned, what are some of the big picture items you can tell people who may not have ever heard of this stuff before that leaves some of these Israeli intelligence fingerprints over the operation?
Right. So there were stories about the Israelis living next door to Atta and kind of monitoring wherever Al Qaeda went, Israel was sure to follow, which makes sense. That's something Israel ought to do, right? It's in their own interest to follow Al Qaeda around. The thing is, if you get wind of them plotting to hit the United States, it's something you would want to tell your ally. Unless you're like, oh no, I hope they do that because we'll steer this off in a cliff. Like, we're not off a cliff. We'll associate all our enemies to it. So how much they had in egging it on or whatever is something we can come back to because I think I have a clear argument that they did it. But for someone new, I wouldn't dump all that on them at once. I would say, look, at minimal, there was foreknowledge by both the U.S. and Israel. And at minimal, there was known, proven financial and logistical support given to the hijackers by Saudi Arabia. And there was logistical support given to them by the Israelis. Now, you can try and claim that, oh, they did that. But just like in 93, at the last moment, they're going to swoop in and do a sting, and they just didn't, whatever. You can think that way if you want. That's not what happened. And considering all the billions they put in and all the effort they did to lie about all of it to get a war with Iraq, and the fact that, let me talk about anthrax for a second. The source, they had a alleged meeting in Prague where Muhammad Atta, who's supposed to be the ringleader of the pilots for 9/11, he was supposed to have met in Prague in the Czech Republic, which Dick Cheney called Czechoslovakia because he's an idiot. Because Cheney was in the government when they broke up, so he had to know, and just his mind is back in the 80s or something. I don't know. But they were saying Muhammad Atta met two senior Iraqi officials in Prague. And it should bother people. PNAC, who I was talking about earlier, the Project for the American Century, in August, weeks before 9/11, had a big fat picture of Osama bin Laden and Saddam Hussein. Right? They were already, before 9/11, starting to associate these two together. And they started talking about anthrax out of the blue, all before any of this happens. Now, the original lie they told was that, okay, Iraq met Muhammad Atta. There's an Iraq Al Qaeda connection. But they didn't mention anthrax. And that's because it hadn't been open yet. It had not been open yet because all the airplanes got grounded as a result of 9/11. They grounded the planes, so the mail didn't get where it was supposed to, or it was there and it wasn't being opened because it was overwhelmingly backed up and so on. But they jumped the gun because a couple days after they mailed it, they mailed hoax letters. And that was a big problem and a big mistake because I believe it was September 18th. I have a timeline actually in my closet. I have a poster board of all the dates and stuff. But in doing so, it was a major screw up because in the hoax anthrax that you could some people tried to say was a copycat attack, were identical notes to the notes contained inside the real anthrax where they tried to kill Patrick Leahy and Senator Daschle. So there's no way you could know what the note was unless it had been open, reported on, and then you could do a copycat attack. Well, even though they mailed it after the original was mailed, the original had not been open yet. And so the alleged copycat attack, was already in the mail. So there's no way, and it did have an identical note. You couldn't do that unless the people who mailed the original were the same people that mailed the alleged copycat. So why in the world would you send fake anthrax to Judith Miller of Fox, who does nothing but blame Iraq and yada, 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 and real anthrax to like Patrick Leahy of the Leahy Amendment, which would end all military aid to Israel and write death to Israel on the note. After the anthrax was opened, the same people that said Atta met senior Iraqi officials in Prague added that, oh yeah, by the way, at this meeting, he passed anthrax, the Iraqis passed anthrax to Al-Qaeda. Now that wasn't true, but the Israeli security forces witnessed it. And this is reported in French and German papers, and I think the first paper in the US to talk about it was the New York Observer, which is owned by Charles Kushner.
Oh boy.
This is before
Juicy.
Trump is president. The Kushners, I have a film about them. It's called Trump Sinus Ball and Chain. They're straight up mafia. But anyway, there was no meeting in Prague, and Iraq didn't have anthrax, and neither did Al-Qaeda. Now, the Israeli security forces said they witnessed this, and they said the Czechs witnessed it too, but the Czechs said, we didn't witness this. But the Israelis like, oh, we did. The source that brought that over to the United States was James Woolsey, the former director of Central Intelligence. This is not just some dude. This is the DCI of the CIA.
All right, I'm going to leave you to continue that if you want to on your own. It's the video is called 9/11 Truth for Grown-Ups. It's on Ryan Dawson's YouTube channel. It happened yesterday evening, I think I found it. So I watched quite a bit of it. I know what he says about 9/11 because I've seen him talk about 9/11 a few times. So that's enough though. He goes into the background in a lot of depth. He knows what he's talking about. So I recommend that if you want to follow that up, do your own research. That's one of the places to start. Zionists, of course, are what you'll need to follow up on there, and the Bush family connections, and there's a lot of things to chase down, which I haven't quite done yet, but I'm kind of working on it. On my weekends when I'm not working. The next thing, where should we go from here? So we're accepting that the world kind of works like gangsters work, basically. That's what all of this points to, is the planet is being run by a combination of American, Catholic, Irish, Jewish, and Russian gangsters. So that's the way it's kind of always been. Newcastle, where I live, there's a lot of gangster activity. There's 4 or 5 families that control a lot of things in Newcastle. And at one point, one of the people who was running the town was refusing to allow drugs into the town. It was a guy who was running security at the bars in the centre of town. This is quite a few years ago, but he refused to allow anybody else to bring drugs in, and I think he was refusing to let any drugs anywhere near the bars that he was in control of. That guy was shot at point blank range in Gosforth, I think, and when he was shot, that allowed the other families, the other people who were running bars and security in the town, to bring drugs in. So that's how the world works in this town, and globally and nationally, it's how the world works. So if there's money involved, if there's drugs and prostitution involved, then there's money involved. So the model stays the same, but the scale changes. Small scale in Newcastle, larger scale in London. In the US, the scale changes again. And globally, the CIA is involved in drugs and uh, people trafficking and prostitution and child sex rings and lots of other things I've heard being talked about with the CIA. But I haven't had the time to investigate all of them. But I'll get to some of them. I know there was a trafficking operation running out of the Ascension Islands, or out of the U.S. base there, and I think there was another one in the North Atlantic somewhere as well. So there's trafficking coming from Africa and Central Europe, from the states in the former Yugoslavia, via US operations there, via the security service operations that are private companies out there. Where do we want to go from here? I'm making this up as I go along, folks, so give me a couple of minutes to think about it. I might play another video, see how we go. Talk about me for a few minutes. So my life at the moment, in terms of the radio show, I'm thinking about how to live stream it on YouTube. I'm halfway towards being able to do that, but my tech's not quite there. So I can live stream, but I don't know whether I can simultaneously use Skype and live stream a radio show onto YouTube at the same time. If I can work out how to do that, though, I'll be doing that in the future. I might find another slot as well, as I mentioned at the beginning. If I can find a 2-hour slot that works, I can do something over the winter for 6 months. That gives me more. Well, I could potentially take an extra hour on Saturday, but I don't want to commit to an extra hour on Saturday because I've only got Saturday and Sunday to do the stuff I need to do. So one evening during the week, late-ish, 9 o'clock till 11, maybe in my time, might work. I don't know. I haven't worked it out yet. I'm figuring this out as I go along, but I know I'll have more time at home during the winter, and I'll be able to focus a bit more during the winter, so I might as well get some content out. And apart from that, the world's pretty good, though. We've had some drama at work. I'll talk about that as well. We've had some not really related to COVID-19, but COVID-19's in the background of it. We had somebody walk out of the team that I work with on Tuesday or Wednesday afternoon. And she's a lady who's very, very frightened of the virus situation, so she's been on edge ever since we went back to work. And I think that was in the background of the walkout. So it's affecting people psychologically in quite a major way. It's bringing up fear and anxiety. It's bringing up paranoia to be visible, that people maybe weren't aware of as much. That can be a good thing. That can be a good thing. Now, thinking about that in the context of a healing process, I tend to think of everything as a healing process because I'm trained as a hands-on spiritual healer, Reiki healer. So I think of the virus situation that we're in as shadow integration. I was talking to Mona about this during the week on Wednesday, but if you think of the whole thing as a healing process, a psychological process, then things come up, they're uncomfortable, but they're coming into consciousness to be integrated and to heal. So if you've got something buried in your subconscious that's had a bit of paranoia in it, you've had a situation in the past when you were a small child, for example, then that can come up in a global situation like we're in. That will come up to the surface. It'll create some drama and some tension. Uh, you can either treat it as something you don't want to have, or you can treat it as something that's there to be integrated. So if the paranoia comes up, if the fear and anxiety comes up, what I do is I hit it with some emotional freedom technique or some Sedona method, which is very simple assumption that you can let go of things really. There's not a huge amount of Sedona method, but I find it very useful. The assumptions about the virus, the assumptions about what we need to do to deal with the virus can all be kind of tackled with the questioning process that's in the work of Byron Katie, which is another thing that I speak about here and there on this show. But you can use that to break down the assumptions that you're making about how to deal with the world and the assumptions that the world's making. There's no way to know where this is coming from, really. It could be natural, it might be man-made, it might be a bioweapon, it might have come from the States, it could have come from China on its own. There's no way really to know at the moment. I haven't got a firm conclusion about any of it, but I suspect that it might have come from research that was originally done in the States that was moved to China when it was banned in the States. And I'm speculating a bit with that, but North Carolina had a university where there was some research going on, and there was a moratorium on the research. The funding was potentially moved to China, from what I've seen so far. And that then produces, over the period of 5 years or so, that produces a variation in a virus, if there is a virus, which I'm still not sure about, and a reaction to a variation in a virus, an extreme overreaction in my view. Right, I'm going to play another video for 10 minutes. I'm going to play a little bit more of Ryan talking about 9/11 truth for grown-ups. Here we go.
Under Clinton, who Clinton never talked to. Clinton appoints this man, and he hates him, but he did it anyway. This is where it gets into Epstein.
Right.
Well, let's just pause that. Don't worry about that for now. Woolsey brings it over to PNAC, and of course, the Kagan operation, they start spitting out Otto went to Prague. Then you get Gary Schmidt and Fred Barnes and Robert Kagan all writing about anthrax and sourcing James Woolsey. And he's he's not just a CIA, he's the head of the CIA at a time, hardcore Zionist. And so that went in the media, and they said, "Oh, Iraq's got anthrax," and they doubled down. They've got mobile weapon labs that are making anthrax, and guess who said that? Judith Miller, the woman that got the fake anthrax. And there were no mobile weapons labs, but Colin Powell goes to the UN with a mock vial of anthrax, and he starts talking about VX gas and anthrax from mobile weapons labs. He's got some stupid picture of the labs because they didn't exist, so they just drew, look, this is what it would look like as a cartoon. And the guy in Powell didn't write that speech. That was coming from two guys, Clark and Libby. So Richard Clark, the Terzar, and Louis Leibovitz, or Louis Libby, Louis Scooter Libby, they called him, who we talked about earlier. They wrote that garbage, and it was nothing but lies, but it's very important because the legal reason that Iraq was invaded was that they were alleged to have broken the UN resolution about WMDs. They had not broken that, and it was just lie upon lie. Then you get William Safire saying, "Oh, Saddam's got chemical weapons under his palaces." Scott Ritter, the weapons inspector, would say, "No, he doesn't." And the IAEA and every inspection, every international body ever had cleared Iraq of any wrongdoing, and it didn't matter. It was prove a negative, prove you're not doing something, prove you don't have something, and they're like, "Well, come inspect, come look, whatever," and nothing was good enough. We're like, "We want to look in your palaces," and at that point, Saddam's like, "No, I'm not. You're not looking under my bed for missiles, whatever." Because that's how you assassinate people.
Yeah.
So, and Saddam actually offered to have a debate with Bush. Of course, none of the media wanted that.
That would have been incredible.
It would have been.
That would have been like Hot Shots with Leslie Nielsen, where they have Saddam come out of the fire.
It would have been a beatdown worse than the Biden-Trump thing's gonna be.
Creepy Joe. We're gonna give it to Creepy Joe, Ryan. Believe me, they're gonna have to inject him with fresh adrenochrome before they put up. When I get done with him,
It's gonna be huge. Have you ever seen? Y'all have seen Dumbo, like when you're kids?
Yeah, the elephant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The pink elephant scene. It's one of the trippiest scenes that is allowable for children, right? The pink elephants.
Disney.
They're blowing bubbles into elephants, and they start changing colors and walking upside down, all that. If you watch that in reverse with a little bit of acid, it would still make more sense than Joe Biden talking about leg hairs and roaches.
And then, well, Biden's a player in all this too, because he ran cover for Mahmoud Ahmed from the ISI. You know.
Yes, he did. And all right, we can talk about the money laundering,
which he's probably forgotten about by now. Who are you talking about? Muhammad Ali is a great fighter. But one thing I wanted to
one of the best fighters.
Oh yeah, one thing I wanted to go back on really quickly on the anthrax.
Yeah, we can talk about the money allegedly from Pakistan and stuff, but the prior method of moving money around to create Al Qaeda, the diaspora fighters in Afghanistan, was through BCCI, and that had been so corrupt and just worse than Goldman Sachs, and like not even trying to hide it, that it had been defunct by the early 90s. But for about a decade, that's how they moved the money around. They later went through Riggs Bank, traditional CIA money laundering institution, and they had Saudi royals wire money through their wives to the wives of some middlemen who then passed it on to Al Qaeda. That was one of the methods.
Princess Haifa.
Yes, Adwi Darket and Haifa, Bandar Bush, and co. from Prince Turki bin Fasil had sent money through these two guys, Omar Bayoumi and Osama Basnan, who helped at least 3 of the hijackers that we know of. There's obviously similar chains to everybody. And they're just uninterested in following up on this. I mean, you've got Saudi royals sending money to Al Qaeda through intermediaries. And beyond just that, they got them when they picked them up, because these guys could barely speak English or couldn't at all. They were also using a Kurdish mosque as a front to launder money. They bought these guys an apartment, stayed with them for a month, and then continued to live right across the street. Just, out of the sympathy of, I just found there's some Sunni Saudis living in California, and I thought I'd buy them an apartment just because,
I'm a nice
such
guy.
a nice guy.
The charity of my heart, yeah.
Exactly. Bullshit.
Was that Abdul Zadar Sheikh, or that was with Almidar and Al-Hazmi, right? He was the FBI informant. That was a different one.
It starts with those two, and then Haji Hanjour. And it may have actually started earlier than that in Louisiana, actually. But wherever you want to start it, they don't really go to flight schools until California. So you could say, well, in Louisiana, we didn't know what they were doing yet. Fine. I don't believe you, but them. But okay, fine. you definitely knew in California, like, what are these guys doing here? They're terrorists. Like, they're already terrorists. Should be on the no flies list, right?
Two of
And they
them were
want
at
to
the
go
Malaysian
fly
summit
planes.
too.
Yeah, right. And then it's just like none of this stuff is so simple, and yet you can't get your foot in the door when you start talking 9/11 to anybody, because of basically it's about Alex Jones. They just want to talk about physics of the buildings falling too fast based on eyeballing it.
Right.
And Building 7 fell. Jane Stanley reported it on BBC. You gotta like let them say all that stuff first and be like, "Are you done? Would you like know who did it now?" Like,
So I like your 9/11 for adults premise, Ryan.
Thank you.
9/11, and yeah, and that's how I feel. I mean, look, anytime now you get belittled if you bring up 9/11, and people think you're going to be talking about fucking cartoon planes and thermite and 10 seconds at free
Mini
fall speed,
nukes and do weapons and
all that shit. Look, if people can really learn about the stuff that you talk about and you've researched and dug up.
What I'm talking about too, by the way, are in our own FBI field office reports that no one read.
That's right.
It's documented.
Documented.
And a lot of it's in the GIS report. Because another thing that Jonestown did is they acted like the 9/11 Commission was the only investigation. That was like
they ignored
smallest.
Bob Graham.
Well, there was Pent Bomb before that. There was the FBI investigation in 2002.
I'm glad you guys know this stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, we've been 9/11 for adults for a long time, Ryan.
Yeah, I did 9/11 Truth for Grown-Ups on Facebook too, and got banned the second day. So, and then the guy doing it with me also got banned, and like for a year, for like 9 months in a row, I got banned. I'm like, well, I got kicked out of 9/11 Truth for saying an airplane hit the Pentagon.
Yeah. That's controversial, apparently.
Are you guys seeing the running out of time thing on your end too?
Yeah, just under 4 minutes. So what do we do about that?
It's asking me to upgrade. I wonder if I click.
Right, that's going to say using Zoom, and then using the free version of Zoom by the looks of it. Right, so that's enough of that. I've got to tell you where I am on the internet now. You can find me at freeassociationradioshow.com. You can find me at imaginationcreatesreality.live. You can also find me at reikimasterinitiation.com. You can find me at, what's the other one? cancercuremastermindgroup.com. There's a Discord server set up, which is called Free Association Radio Show Live. So if you put that into Google, you'll probably find the Discord server and hopefully the website. All the research I do, I put on the website. Some of it I put on the Discord server. If it's relevant for the Imagination Creates Reality, I put it on there. If it's relevant to health topics, I put it on cancercuremastermindgroup.com. And sometimes reikimasterinitiation.com, depending on what it is. Just to let you know, Revolution Radio is listener supported. There's two rooms running, 2 studios running, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So it does cost money. The archives are up and running now. So if you go to revolution.radio, you'll see a Patreon button. If you can give something that's monthly, that's $5 or $6 a month, you'll get access to the archives. I'm in the process of downloading this week's shows because I only get the weekend to listen to stuff, really. So I'm downloading the mechanic show, and I'm downloading something else that I've forgotten now. But I'll get to it. Red Pill Roundtable is always good. There's plenty of things to listen to. Bruce McDonald's always interesting. I find his shows are very, very fascinating. He goes into a lot of things that I wouldn't normally go to, which is why I like what he does, because he's taking me to places that I wouldn't normally go to. I ended up listening to an Art Bell interview about exorcisms last night, and that's not a place that I've been for a long time. But it's something I need to look at. and it's something that I'm looking at slowly and carefully. I don't want to disturb my psychological balance too much, which means I'm prepared to take a look, but I'm not going to live there. Yeah, so just a reminder, we're coming up to the end of the show now. Let's see who's still in the, if there's anybody active in the chat room. There's still people in the chat room, so if you want to go down to revolution.radio or freedomslips.com, you can take part in the conversation that's going on there. There's a dozen people active. Normally, there's usually 25 or 30 people sitting around. Sometimes there's more than half a dozen active at a time, and it gets quite, the chat gets quite quick. But it's good. Good links are being shared, and the quality of the conversation is normally pretty good. It's child friendly, so it's a family oriented chat room, so they don't let people use bad language or anything like that. So I'll be back next Saturday at 11 o'clock Eastern Time, 4 p.m. UK time. Thanks for listening.